In marriage, when communication is clicking, two becoming one makes so much sense. You feel like you're skipping through life easy. But when connection and unity is missing, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells. Worse yet, it can feel like you're walking on sharp, jagged edges. Hello, my friend. My name's Zach, and on this channel, I help Christian husbands live uncommon lives. After all, that's what God calls us to. You see, the only way we're going to do this is by having good communication in marriage. And this is something you and I are going to grow in our whole life. See, have you ever had these moments where you think you know what your wife needs and you try to give it to her?
Does someone need a hug? I just wanted a hug.
Wasn't what she needed. Or the silent treatment happens.
6 hours later.
These things happen in marriage, but we don't want it to be our common story. See, we want to have a thriving marriage. To unify deeply requires connection, and by the grace of God, a phenomenal connection.
You complete me.
So many times in marriage, intention and impact do not meet. So many times we think we're saying something and our wife is hearing something else. Here's an embarrassing example from my own life. Recently, my wife and I went to Mexico. Wonderful time for our 20th anniversary, and she was buying new clothes for the trip. And she was showing me her clothes, and I was pretending to be engaged. and she loves to show me what she got. I don't love it, but I know she loves it, so I look. And she was showing me these different outfits, and she showed me this new shirt she was excited about, and it was striped. And I said, "Oh, you're going to look like a beach ball." Okay, I was not intending the way that sounds. I was intending to point out the stripedness of the shirt. That's it. And be a little funny, because I'm hilarious. But instead, she heard that she's going to look like a round thing on the beach, and that I was making a comment towards her weight. Now, luckily, by the grace of God, she died laughing. And it's a funny story that I'm allowed to share on YouTube. But there's been times in my marriage where that exact same stupidity out of my mouth, intention and impact did not match. And instead of laughter, hurt happened. Or frustration. Some other ways in which intention impact doesn't meet is like on my trip in Cancun, like every time we left the hotel, Rachel said, "Hey, do you have the room key?" She's intending to make sure this guy has the room key because I'm forgetful. The impact on my heart is, you don't trust me? This happens all the time in marriage, where intention and impact doesn't match. And so I'm going to dive you through exact formula to where you're going to get this 100% of the time. No, I'm going to walk you through an exact formula that will help intention and impact match a little more. Let's dive in. The first thing we need to do is pray. See, we can forget this and try to do these cool steps, I'm going to say, that are impactful, but they are nothing without the grace of God involved. And so I think too often we forget to pray for unity in our marriage, and this is one of those things in which we can be unified, is by communicating, because you and her are different. I hope that that's not like a news flash for you. Like, you might be introverted, she might be extroverted. You might be a verbal processor, she might be an internal processor. You might be quick, she might be more deliberate. These are all differences within our marriage that those things alone make for confusion. Also, you're a man, she's not. I know that's earth-shattering, but as a man, we have certain values. Words mean something to us that they don't mean to them. I've talked the way I've talked in a locker room to my wife before, and she's confused. Like, she doesn't understand what I'm even saying. We don't even value the same things often as men and women. And so it is by the grace of God that we're actually even able to connect. So let's dive into some practical steps. The first step when communicating with anyone is you need to be aware of meaning making. Okay, I'm going to explain what that is, but first just know, we all make meaning. There's not one situation that doesn't happen that you don't make meaning. The only ones that do not make meaning are schizophrenics. And I hope you're not schizophrenic. So if you're not, I'm just going to assume that, then you make meaning out of every situation. So, for example, if you see two people yelling in a parking lot, you're going to come to a conclusion of what's happening. It might be that your conclusion is they're fighting. Your conclusion might be they're acting out a play in the parking lot. That'd be a really weird conclusion. Your conclusion would be they're not fighting, they're just passionate. There's all sorts of conclusions you're going to draw to, but we make meaning constantly. Have you ever had, this has never happened to me, have you ever had someone slamming drawers? Right? You're going to make meaning that they're upset or they're in a hurry. And so this is not just not make meaning, it's just to be aware that you are making meaning. And what makes this even harder is we make meaning constantly, and you and I have trauma, wounds, hurts, values, things we like, that you're putting everything that happens to you through those lenses. So it's a subject for another video, but like you getting upset when your wife has a scrunched up face and stuff like that, that's oftentimes has nothing to do with her and has more to do with your upbringing and the lens coming through it. Because you're making meaning off of things that others don't make the same meaning. Not everything's universal. Okay, so that's where we start. Number two, we're a listener. See, too often we want to say what we think, what we feel, and we think that the mouth is the lead into communicating properly. It's not. The lead that needs to happen in communicating properly is these. And I know I have larger ones than average, but we all can use them. We all can use our ears first. So you need to be a listener first. And listening alone, it's not good enough. We need to have a good posture of listening. Here's what we do. We are listening to understand. There's three different postures that we listen with. One's listening to understand. The other's listening to hijack. Have you ever had this happen where someone's talking and then they take a breath and someone hijacks the conversation in a whole new direction? They were just waiting to share about their thing. Or there's listening to interrupt. Same thing, you're waiting for someone to breathe. And then the moment they take a breath, you interrupt them to tell them your thoughts on the subject. I'm guilty of that one probably the most. The last one is listening to understand. So when you're listening, all you're doing is trying to make sure you understand what your wife is saying. That's it. And if you're a passionate person like myself, it's a good way of, instead of saying arguer, you need to know that understanding does not mean agreeing. You could totally disagree with what she's saying. That's okay. Keep it to yourself. All you're doing is listening to understand. That's it. And when we're listening to understand, we need to make sure that we're listening with our whole body. So what do I mean by that? It's not just listening with your ears and regurgitating facts. It's making eye contact with them, looking at them. Lean forward like you're actually paying attention. Have you ever heard what someone said with your ears and then they say, you just don't listen to me? That's because you aren't listening with your whole body. You're getting the facts, but you're not listening with your whole body and you aren't understanding what they're saying. It might feel like an attack. It kind of is. But we're better off to just go, okay, that's a sign that she's not feeling heard. How do I help her feel heard? It's a pro tip, a big one that will help you in this. The next one, after someone's sharing, especially when it's emotional, and you are listening to understand, you're going to repeat it back. You're going to say, in your own words, what you think they just said. And you're going to be good at this because you were listening the whole time to understand. And so you understand completely, and then you're going to try. You're going to shoot your shot. And you're going to repeat back what you think they just said to you. And then you're going to ask him, is that correct? Now, it's okay if it's not. If it's not, ask them to explain more. And shoot again. And what is it, Michael Jordan that says you miss all the shots you don't take? Like, Oftentimes, you might be a perfectionist or a slower processor, and you might go, I gotta get this right. It's okay if you get it wrong. Just shoot again. Eventually, you're gonna get it right. And when she feels heard, you're gonna watch her shoulders relax, her calm a little bit. Every time I've seen that happen. And then you're gonna do the next step, and this requires more humility. And you're gonna ask them if there's anything else. Oftentimes, there's multiple things. In fact, before I started recording videos today, I was telling a friend about a situation that happened last week. And I said, well, and I said about 6 things that were all true. I felt them all. But if I was talking and they were short with me and just wanting to move on, they would have heard 1. But my friend, I think your wife is more like an onion than you realize, and there's layers to her. And this is one of the ways we can peel back the layers and know them more, is by listening to understand, shoot the shot, you got it right, and then is there anything else? Every time I've asked if there's anything else, probably 99 times out of 100, there is more. And so if you ask, is there anything else, they'll tell you more stuff, and then you shoot the shot again. This is what I hear you saying, is that right? And you keep going with this until there's nothing else. Until she's totally unburdened herself. And this can be hard because some of the things you're going to be listening to are attacks on you. And you're going to feel like wanting to defend or attack back. But if you stay in this listening posture and is there anything else, shoot the shot, go down, she's going to calm her heart. And so are you. It's been very effective in my marriage. Now here's the next step. Speaking. You got to speak. I don't know if you're an internal processor or external, but if you're an internal, that first spot might have been more natural for you. Like, that's easy. It's easy for me to listen, but you do need to speak. Now, my wife is actually the more internal processor in our relationship, and I like to remind her that I cannot hear what she's thinking. And so sometimes she'll have brilliant thoughts, but she kind of keeps them to herself and doesn't realize it. And so that might be you. But you need to speak up and share your heart, share your thoughts. And here's some tips when you're speaking. You need to be clear on what you're saying and concise. Like, I like to circle like a vulture, but it's better off when I really plan out what I'm going to say and I speak it very clearly. In fact, again, on that conversation that was happening before I started recording, I was processing through with someone so that I can talk to someone else in a clear manner. And you might need to do that. That might help you to be clear. The next step is you're trying to be loving, not kind. And here's what I mean. Like, sometimes when we're trying to be really kind, we can soften something so much that someone can't hear. I'm guilty of this. But instead, if we're clear in a loving way, like our tone and our posture is clear and loving, it's much more effective. But when you try to be kind, sometimes you can beat around the bush so much that someone doesn't even know what you're trying to say. When it's a hot button issue, make I statements, your feelings, not judgment. What do I mean by that? Let's just say your wife is paying a lot of attention to your children and not you, and it's bugging you, and you want to tell them. You can say that I feel unseen. That might be what you say. But even that, my friend, unseen is not a feeling, it's a judgment. So how we would say that instead is I feel hurt or I feel sad. And then you're going to say why. What we often can do is we can turn a feeling into a judgment and an attack on accident. So that same situation, like I feel unseen because all you do is pay attention to them. You don't pay any attention to me. That doesn't go well. But instead, I feel sad because I'm really wanting your attention and I don't feel like I'm fully getting it. That's how we can unburden from attack to just a statement that's there. Sometimes when the situation is that our wife is pouring into our kids and doesn't see us, which happens a lot in marriage, we can pose it in a way that's putting our kids and our wife and us all on opposite corners. And we don't want that. We want these I statements, our feelings, and void them of judgments as much as possible. And then once we say that, if we're the speaker and they're not repeating back what we're saying, we can say, hey, I just want to make sure you hear my heart and not something unintentional. What did you hear me say? And let them shoot the shot. They might say something like in that situation, you're telling me I'm a terrible wife. That has happened sometimes. And you can come back and say, no, that's not what I'm saying. You're a wonderful wife. And you're saying, but I feel sad. I would love some time with you. That's all I'm wanting is a little time with you. I hope you want time with me. I know it's busy. How can we schedule that in? See, that's where the tactics come in. After the feelings, after the statements. And if it's right, if these things are connecting, you can move forward and you can be more connected in the future. I hope that these tips help you to raise your communication with your wife to a level that most people can't think or imagine. And you can be that uncommon husband living an uncommon life.